Hello, Bill. How are you?
I'm the same, Beck, which is tragic for everyone.
It really is. It really is. Sorry to hear that. So let's start with what happened in New Mexico. And I think the clarifying moment here should be for the press. Why so many people think that the press is the enemy of the people. And I don't feel that way. I think they're a helper to ignorance. And they certainly have an agenda. But you could look at the case in New Mexico and say, maybe this is why so many people think you're an enemy of the people. What are your thoughts on how they covered this Islamic extremist camp?
Well, we've always known, and this was kind of stunning, that there was a hesitancy on a part of the New York Times. They led this press attitude, hesitancy to condemn Muslims who were violent. I think that's about as accurate as I can make it. There's a hesitancy about it because in their mind, Muslims are a minority in America, and you know how the white people treat minorities, and if we start to report accurately on them and their violent tendencies, then peaceful Muslims will be attacked. So it was all that. It's not like, okay, we have to tell the truth. It's if we tell the truth, then this is going to happen because we live in a white supremacist society. That's what they always do. So that's the origin of, let's hesitate. And this New Mexico story is part of that. Oh, it's just one place. They're crazy people. We can't make a bigger point on it, so we're going to ignore it. And that's the story. But you can see how people who understand we are not a nation that is rounding up Muslims. We have been unbelievably tolerant. Yes. Right. Even after 9/11, there wasn't any outbreak of violence against Muslims. But if you really want to carry it a step further, can you imagine if this group in New Mexico were white supremacists?
Exactly right. If they were just NRA members.
Or anybody like that, it'd be 85,000 live shots. Spike Lee would be down there filming a movie. Look at these people. So you knows that this double standard exists.
So you saw the coverage of the Bundy Ranch, and you remember there were helicopters. It was everywhere. It was huge. However, because after the police finally stepped in Portland and sent everybody home, we find out that Antifa had taken and really kidnapped federal agents. They had kept them against their will, blocked them in their own building, the ICE building, and wouldn't release them. ICE calls for the police. The police say, the mayor said, we can't help you. Federal agents had to come in. Where were the satellite trucks? Where were the helicopters on that, Bill?
Well, it's even worse than that. You had individuals, one of whom owned a food truck.
Yes.
Calling the local Portland police. I worked in Portland. I don't know whether you know that or not. I anchored the news on KATU. Beautiful town. And when I was there in the 80s, it was liberal, but it wasn't insane liberal. Now it's insane liberal. So there were individuals who felt that they were in danger, American citizens, and they called the police, and the police simply were ordered by the mayor, who is also the police commissioner. How insane is that?
Yeah.
All right. They were ordered not to help the
non-involved citizens. Non-involved citizens that felt threatened.
Right. People who were just around that compound selling hot dogs. So what you have is a violation of the mayor's oath, because he swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, and part of the Constitution is that law enforcement protects people in danger. And that's why we have law enforcement. That's why they got those powers. That's why they carry a gun. That's why they're allowed to arrest you. So you're right. I mean, I didn't see CNN down there. I think they mentioned it, but not
No, it wasn't. You see the Bundy Ranch? You see the Bundy Ranch?
But on BillO'Reilly.com, my solution to the problem, as always, was very clear and very vivid. I said that they should send Paul Manafort to Portland, Oregon. Okay? So Manafort, just maybe on a weekend furlough from his solitary confinement, could just go to the Rose City, then everybody would be there and report on it.
When it comes to, let me go back to the Taos story. When it comes to this story, you have Linda Sarsour just at the last ISNA conference praising as a mentor, as a guy who plays a big role in her life, is calling her and encouraging her and teaching her about Islam. This guy that she says is the father of this guy who was holding these children and teaching them how to kill. Does this play any role in the media not covering that Linda Sarsour, who was the founder and one of the lead organizers of the women's movement?
I don't think so. I don't even think the media is smart enough to put that together. But remember, Linda Sarsour is Louis Farrakhan's big friend.
I know. So, Bill, how can you say they're not smart enough to put that together? I'm a disc jockey. I'm an old disc jockey, man. I'm smart enough to put that together.
Okay, but in order to put that together, you have to have a frame of reference. All right, explain that to Stu. All right, you've got to actually know what happened in the past and who the players were. You're telling me Don Lemon is going to put that together, Beck? Is that what you're telling me here?
No, I think that Don Lemon and others are not curious. Are not intellectually honest or curious.
They don't even know who Linda Sarsour is, what her connections to Farrakhan and this crazy Muslim guy are. They don't know. And why don't they know? Because they don't care. They're not seeking the truth. We've talked about this before. They don't care. It's not important to them. And so that's why you don't have any of this coverage. Even in New Mexico, which is turned very liberal, the state has turned very left, the local coverage, because we were looking at some of it to get information, was scant. Okay? They didn't really want to cover the story. Because it wasn't about oppression of minorities, that's a big theme in New Mexico.
It really was. So, it was, the oppression of children who were minorities. They were Muslims. I don't know. I mean, they were oppressed by Muslims.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
It was minorities oppressing other minorities, just like in Chicago.
Yes.
Why doesn't that cover that story, that unbelievable story, one of the biggest stories in America in the decade, get wall-to-wall coverage? Because it's black-on-black crime. And, the origin of black-on-black crime is white supremacy. You know that, Beck. And so they're not going to really bring that to the forefront. And it's such a corrupt system. I'm so glad you're highlighting these stories, because if you put it all together and you're a fair-minded person, you just got to go, we don't have a media in America anymore.
No, we don't.
It does not exist.
Yeah, we don't. Back with Bill O'Reilly. Bill, where do you stand on the digital ghettoization of voices, the digital erasing of voices, even those voices that are despicable, like Alex Jones?
I'm not, as you know, I'm a Luddite. I don't go into the world of high tech very often.
That surprises me.
I have people who do that.
Yes.
It is frightening to me.
All right, okay.
The thing that always stays in my mind is that these are private companies. All right? Now, there's also a complicated thing, is that they're allowed to operate on the American grid, which the public really owns. So there's a crossover into what they do. It's not just a private company like a car company or something like that would be. I don't believe in censorship, but I think there's got to be regulation of defamation and rank attacks that are untrue on people. It's got to be some kind of regulation. The problem is that there's not very many people qualified to do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people who run these high-tech companies, they don't know very much about editorial. They don't know what's right and wrong. They don't have a staff that checks anything. It's all about political correctness to them. I mean, Laura Ingraham got attacked this week for making a demographic comment that she put into some kind of context. You may disagree with it, but all of a sudden she's a white supremacist and they're just ripping her up. You know, that kind of stuff is really dangerous. But I think the government has got to basically have some kind of regulatory capacity about what is legal and illegal, not what's right and wrong. But if there's an illegality involved in like, let me give you an example, inciting violence, so that if you have a commentator that says, you kill all Irish people, yes, Irish people are evil.
Well, let's use a real example. Louis Farrakhan. Right.
He's a hater. But, you know, Farrakhan is interesting because when he writes his speeches, he doesn't come right out and say, he talks generally. And
you mean about violence?
Yes. About hurting other people, mm-hmm. white devils.
Correct. Jewish Satans.
Stuff, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So, I mean, I would err on the side of you got to have the expression out there, as you said, even if it's hateful. But the government should put some kind of guidelines in place, not laws specifically, but guidelines.
I think we already have that. We've all done that. Here's the thing: private companies can make their own private decision. However, it amazes me. I'm consistent on that. When it comes to the 14th Amendment, you can't discriminate against blacks. Okay, we all know that, and I wouldn't want to. But if there is the coffee cup cafe, all spelled with K's instead of C's, they have a right to exist. I don't want them in my community. I'll never go there, but they have a right to exist, and I have a right to say they're despicable and not go there.
It's true what you're saying, but I know you don't like the government intrusion, and neither do I. But because these companies access technology that's partially paid for by
I'll give you an easier one. They engage in interstate commerce. That's what FDR. That's how FDR changed America. Interstate commerce.
But they also are on the dole. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can imagine this, Facebook and all of these companies that amass billions of dollars, and the dole is paid for by the taxpayers.
I don't know who I trust less, the government or Silicon Valley. I really don't, and that's up for debate, I guess. We go to Bill O'Reilly, back with more of the recap of the week. The release of my new book, Addicted to Outrage, is September 18th. We invite you to go get it now on Amazon.com. And also, I'm going on tour, and I'll be announcing the cities that I'm going on tour, I believe, on Monday, but it will definitely be early next week.
I remember there was a conversation about you going to Long Island in Bill O'Reilly's neighborhood.
Yeah, I can't do Bill O'Reilly's neighborhood.
I mean, maybe that's something that Bill would come out and he could support. Maybe he could talk about his book a little bit. I mean, it seems. Why does he leave? I mean, yeah, Bill, do you leave the house these days, or what's the?
Once in a while. Once in a while. Mostly I'm a shut-in. But Beck is welcome to come to Long Island. But I don't know if he's going to be able to get the accents down,
Well, I can't. I don't understand the Long Islanders, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, hey, is that Beck? Is that Glenn Beck?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So, Bill, let me go over something that you just posted on BillO'Reilly.com. Yep. Having spent a good part of the last year writing my upcoming book, Killing the SS, The Hunt for the Worst War Criminals on Earth, which, by the way, is fantastic. Finished it.
Thank you.
I'm tuned into violent behavior more than ever before. Many of the German killers who slaughtered children, women, and defenseless men were ordinary people before Hitler started World War II. They held jobs as merchants, farmers, and local politicians. They had families. They believed in God. Yet they murdered millions of citizens on orders from deranged Nazi leaders. They volunteered to serve in death head units. They relished working in concentration camps where they could brutalize at will because it kept them off the front lines. Those Germans who were not part of the SS certainly knew about the brutality against the Jews and other civilians. Incredibly, most of them accepted it. Human beings have a tendency to rationalize their bad behavior and to look away from evil, even if they think about it. Think about it in the first place. Certainly, we have seen that throughout history, but now we're experiencing open evil here in America. Bill, are you talking about the Nazi rally in Washington this weekend that the press is anticipating?
No, that's not the focal point of the column. The focal point of the column is the murder in Chicago.
But there's only been, I think, 78 wounded and 18 killed since last Friday. What violence in Chicago?
Between 7,000 and 10,000 shot in the last 2.5 years on the nation's third largest city. So when you say, okay, so what's the difference between an SS concentration camp guard who guns down people and the gang members in Chicago who pull up at a party and there are hundreds of people milling around and they start shooting into the crowd? What's the difference? Is there a difference?
No, I was going to say ideology, but no, I don't know if there is.
It's evil. They don't. Both groups couldn't care less about human life, and both groups were basically allowed to do what they do by the power structure. Look, are you telling me that in certain selected neighborhoods in Chicago that the federal, state, and local authorities cannot control these people walking out of their house with guns and shooting down people in the street? You telling me that? Because that's not true. That's a lie. You'd have to put the National Guard in the neighborhoods. You would have to do that. But why wouldn't you do it? Why didn't you do it 5 years ago? This has been going on for almost 10 years. You know, when there's a civil disturbance, the governor of any state or the president of the United States has the authority to put the National Guard in to quell the civil disturbance. Is this not a civil disturbance?
So why don't they do it, Bill?
Because they're afraid of being called whatever, fascists or anti-black, because a lot of the activists don't want it. They don't want to occupy black neighborhoods, that kind of thing.
If you actually care about the people, I don't care what color they are. If my community was under siege and we knew who the bad guys were, we knew they were these gangs, and the police would not come in. It just, again, like Portland, I'm just an average citizen. I'm not involved in this. I want to. This is my home.
It's different than Portland because the police in Chicago will come in, but they are not allowed to stop and frisk. So if they know there's a gang member and they know who the gang members are, and he's walking down the street, an officer cannot come over to him and pat him down to find the gun. Because Rahm Emanuel and the city council, uber leftists, have banned that. So that's number one. They can't do that. Number two, if they do stop someone and that someone turns around and says, what are you stopping me for? I didn't do anything. They can get sued. The individual police officers lose their whole career because there's no backing by the uber left Chicago politicians. No backing for the police. They're not backed. So the police officers say, you know what? I'm not going to do much because if I do anything, it's going to be my career. It's going to be over. And it's happened time and time and time again. So now the federal authorities, just like they did in Mississippi, just like they did in New Orleans when they took over, the federal authorities took over the New Orleans Police Department, have to go into Chicago and stop the carnage unless you want another 10,000 people to be shot in the next 2 years. And, you know, you look at these press conferences, Rahm Emanuel, this is Barack Obama's big guy. And where's Barack Obama on this? He used to work in these neighborhoods as a community organizer. Why isn't he there screaming like I'm screaming? Where's LeBron James and Michael Jordan and all the social justice warriors in the athletic community? Why aren't they in Chicago? You know why Sharpton and Jackson aren't there, because they don't make money by going down there and pointing out that it's black-on-black crime, and the social problems come from a total collapse of the family in those areas. That's why this is happening. These gang members some of them are as young as 9, and they're given guns because they don't have any supervision at their home. That's all true, but you'll never hear it reported. And there's excuse after excuse. And the governor of Illinois is a Republican, Rayner. I mean, he sits there in Springfield, and he does nothing while tens of thousands of people are shot. More people are shot in Chicago than in Afghanistan, where there's a war. And I'm saying to myself, I wrote this Killing the SS. I tell you about the evil that was perpetuated and that Germans looked away. German Americans are the largest ethnic group in America. There's no difference between Americans and Germans, ethnic-wise. And the whole population of Germany says, oh, yeah, well, you know, it's not me. I'm not killing them. Well, you know, Dachau's right out of Munich. You saw the barbed wire there. You know people disappear from your neighborhoods, and yet you do nothing from 1933 to 1938. 5 years, you do nothing. And the same thing's happening in Chicago. You let these people run out on the street and sell narcotics at will, and they're armed to the teeth, and they go and kill anybody they want to kill, including children and elderly people walking to the grocery store, and you don't do anything about it? And I'm including President Trump in this as well. On the campaign trail, he, because of my reporting, said, you know, I'm going to clean this up. Well, clean it up then. Put the guard in there. You put the guard at the border, and it worked, by the way, at the border.
Can you imagine Donald Trump putting the National Guard?
He'd be a racist.
He would be.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Here's what's crazy, Bill. Remember when the police officer was shot here in Dallas during that Black Lives Matter
Yes.
protest?
Yes.
So I had people who were actually in that march come into the studio, and I sat with them and I talked to them, and we had a fascinating conversation. Many of them, none of them had actually read the manifesto of Black Lives Matter. They were only marching because they felt like no one was listening to their pleas. And I had mothers and grandmothers who said, we're afraid of our own grandchildren because this evil has come into our community and no one will listen. So we are deemed racist if we do focus on it, and we are racist if we don't focus on it.
But there's a bigger question, because everyone knows if these gang members were in Beverly Hills, this would have stopped the first week. So if it's not going to happen in a white community, and there isn't one white community in the country where it does happen, not one, then why are you allowing it to happen, Rahm Emanuel, in a black neighborhood? Can you explain that to me? No. There's silence. Because poor black people in America are not deemed important enough to take action to protect them. That's racism.
Bill O'Reilly, I'm going to take you way out of your comfort zone. Did you watch Jimmy Kimmel and Kanye West last night?
No, I did not. Are you kidding me?
No, honestly.
No. Why would I watch Jimmy Kimmel and Kanye West?
Listen to me. You should watch this. You should watch this.
I know what happened. I get reports, but I can't
get reports
and actually put my eyes on them.
You should. Kanye West is one of the bravest people in America today. Here's this guy who has wild success and said, it took me a year and a half to work up the courage to say what I said about Donald Trump. A year and a half. He said, because everyone said they would destroy my career, they would destroy everything I have, and I'd be wiped out if I took a stand. But I felt I had to because I'm not going to just go along with the crowd. That's amazing.
Let me ask you two questions since you saw it and I did not.
Yes.
Did Kimmel give him a hard time?
Oh, yes, of course he did. But they're friends. And so it was it was a friend barbs.
So it was friendly jabs.
Yes.
Did West explain why he supports Donald Trump?
Kind of. Yeah, he didn't get into real policies. He kind of did, yeah.
Was there an overarch you can tell me? Why does Kanye West like Donald Trump?
No, he didn't. He focused more on the fact that society cannot tell people what to think.
Okay, I got that. I'm just curious if I told you the story about me and Kanye West in the elevator.
No, I don't remember that.
One time I was in Madison Square Garden, and I'm leaving the game, and the elevator door opens, and there's Kanye West in short pants, and with two guys who are 7'8".
Yeah,
and it was very
and about 800 pounds each, I'm guessing.
Right.
Yeah,
very tough to get in the elevator.
Right,
because I had my two guys who were 7'8".
Yeah,
and so we were all jammed in, and he knew who I was, but he wasn't going to give me the courtesy of a hello or anything like that. And I said to him, "I like your pants, Kanye."
See, that's so he wasn't nice to you after that.
No. Very few people are nice to me. But you were nice to me. But that's it, pretty much across the board.
All right, Bill O'Reilly from BillO'Reilly.com. Do you have a date on your book yet, Bill?
October 12th, I believe. We're going to move it back. And let's talk about that next week because Woodward's book is coming out.
I know. And
that'll be an interesting discussion.
Yes, it will. Thank you very much, Bill O'Reilly.
All right, guys. Have a good weekend.
You bet. Bye-bye. If you have time today, I want you to watch the whole Jimmy Kimmel clip with Kanye West. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, I think there's a lot to learn from it. I'm going to play a couple of the highlights. Last night, Kanye comes on, and he starts to talk a little bit about love and fear. Listen to this.
People got really mad when you were, some people were very happy when you said you liked President Trump. Do you think he is a good president?
You're going to ask me, can I answer the first question you're going to ask?
Answer whatever you want.
Well, it's funny, in this world that we live in, there's two main motivating forces, and I tweet about it all the time. It's love or fear. And you can't explain love. My cousin is locked up for murder, and I love him. I saw he did a bad thing, but I still love him. And just as a musician, African-American, guy out in Hollywood, all these different things, everyone around me tried to pick my candidate for me. Mm-hmm. And then told me every time I said I like Trump that I couldn't say it out loud or my career would be over. I'd get kicked out the black community because blacks we're supposed to have a monolithic thought. We can only be Democrats and all. So even when I said it right before I went to the hospital and I expressed myself.
Listen to this.
And when I came out, I had lost my confidence. So I didn't have the confidence to take on the world and the possible backlash. And it took me a year and a half to have the confidence to stand up and put on the hat, no matter what the consequences were. And what it represented to me is not about policies, and because I'm not a politician like that, but it represented overcoming fear and doing what you felt, no matter what anyone said, and saying, you can't bully me Liberals can't bully me. News can't bully me. The hip-hop community, they can't bully me. Because at that point, if I'm afraid to be me, I'm no longer Ye. That's what makes Ye.
You hear that? That is the most powerful statement on so many levels. Let me just start here. Here's what the left doesn't understand. They are currently putting people through college, and they are indoctrinating. And if you disagree, you're shouted down. The vast majority of people just go along with it. They don't want to get involved. Just don't get involved. It's not worth it. Okay? They're not necessarily thinking those deeper thoughts. And so what happens is, as that gets stronger, you're not even exposed to thoughts. You're not around anybody who says something reasonable, not political, just reasonable. Like, hey, you know what? Should they really? I mean, I think I have the right to choose, right? I mean, I don't necessarily want to go along with everybody. Shouting down. It makes people like Jordan Peterson much stronger. Because I just read this article in Atlantic that we have to talk about. In the Atlantic, this progressive mom with progressive kids in college finds out that her progressive son in his 20s and all of his friends are listening to Jordan Peterson. Why? Because they've never heard this kind of thought before, and they've never heard two people get together and discuss these things without screaming at each other and saying, you're a racist, you're a hater, I got to shut you down, you're the enemy. It's his message of, I just want to be me, is going to connect and is uniquely American. It is what America was founded on. I want to be me, my right to pursue my happiness. The world is moving towards collectivism, and it's a very strong pull. But in America, there is something that we have, I think it's into our fiber now. I think it's in our DNA. I hope it is. This yearning to breathe free. Not with hate, not with contempt, not to crush somebody else, just to be me. Now, the next thing you have to get out of that clip, this broadcast with him last night started with, you make clothing, you're an artist, successful artist, actual physical art, not musical art. You're a physical artist that is incredible. You are a hip-hop guy. You're a music producer, incredibly successful. You make your own clothing, incredibly successful. Here's a guy who is at the pinnacle of success. And we've all seen how arrogant he can be. I mean, he's got reason to believe I can do anything. It takes him a year and a half to get the courage to say, I want to vote my own way. This guy, if this guy takes a year and a half to say it, what chance do you have? What chance do your kids have? This guy shouldn't be afraid of anything. And yet he stood up because everyone said you can't. They'll destroy you. They'll end your career. You'll have nothing in the end. And the guy had the balls to do it. This was not something that he just said. Everybody was like, oh, he's just saying that to sell an album. He might have at the time. You listen to him now? No, he wasn't. His album is already out. It's all done. He's making a much deeper point here. And that is, get away from fear. You should not have the fear of McCarthyism. No matter what the ideology is that they're trying to stifle, McCarthyism is bad. Now, cut 2, please.
We are too protective. We always don't want someone to get hurt. Can you imagine me talking to my publicist before I said I'm going on TV again? One of the things I think that got missed on TMZ is the main thing that I was stressing is the idea of trying love. You know, we're always, pushing out so much hate, and love can cure so much. Just to think, am I moving in love? Is this out of love, not out of pride? Pride is a word that people often say in a positive connotation, but it's actually one of the 7 deadly sins. And it takes too much ownership, but you can replace pride with love. And when I see people just even go at the president, it's like, why not try love? For one person to stand up against all odds and just hug somebody the way that Alice Johnson hugged her family when she got out of jail. That one by one, we can defuse this nuclear bomb of hate that we're in as a society by thinking of everyone as our family.
He went on to talk about how we're programmed. We're all programmed from the beginning. Get off the coffee table. Don't jump on the couch. Don't. He said, a kid, he's got a cape tied around his neck and he's standing on the coffee table. And he's Superman. He's Superman. And he said, get off the coffee table. He said, by the time we're, in our 20s or 30s, we know very clearly that's a couch, don't jump on it. That's a coffee table, don't stand on it. He said, but we've forgotten the reason of the Superman, why we stood on it in the first place. We were being us. And Kimmel responds, well, that's because we want safety. I mean, we got to keep the kids safe. But the bigger point here was, by the time it's my father's point. My father used to say 2 most powerful words in any language, I am. That kid's saying I am Superman. Okay? And by the time you keep training these kids, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and not encourage them to be free thinking, you've just molded them into whatever it is they want to be, or you want them to be, or what society wants them to be, not what they want to be. If you don't answer the question, I am brave, I am strong, I am capable, the entire world is set up to fill in that blank. I am what? If you don't say it to yourself, if you don't know it yourself, and you don't strive for that blank, I am strong, the rest of the world will fill it in for you and tell you you're incomplete, you're not good enough, you're stupid, you're black, and thus you should think this way, you're white, and thus you should act this way. That's his point. It was profound last night.
Yeah, and he has real evidence to back it up. I mean, he and his wife did this approach with the president, right? They decided to love him instead of just trashing him. And what happened? The most important thing to them as an issue, which was, she had fought pretty hard for this, for Alice Johnson, who he mentioned there, to be let out of prison for an old conviction, and it actually happened, right? Like they got real movement there, and it was because that was a policy initiative you can agree with or disagree with outside of treating someone nicely, but they actually did that and got movement on it.
So what is